My name is Haley Wilson. I'm 27 years old, and I just got served legal papers from my own parents. 10 years ago, they kicked me out of our family home because my twin sister Audrey got pregnant, and they decided she needed my bedroom. I left with nothing but my savings and built a life for myself. Now I own several properties, including my dream home. And my parents want to take it all away from me. The betrayal feels twice as painful coming from the same people who already abandoned me once. Before I tell you how my own parents tried to take everything from me twice, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to stand up for yourself against family. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this ends. I grew up in Portland, Oregon with my identical twin sister Audrey. From the outside, we looked like the perfect middle-class family. My dad Robert worked at a local bank as a loan officer, and my mom Grace was a nurse at Providence Portland Medical Center. We lived in a modest 3-bedroom house in a nice neighborhood with good schools. Growing up as twins, people always expected us to be identical in personality too, but we couldn't have been more different. Audrey was outgoing, athletic, and the life of every party. She played volleyball, was a cheerleader, and everyone knew her name. I was quieter, more studious, and preferred books to sports. I got straight A's without much effort and joined the debate team and math club. From early childhood, I could sense my parents favored Audrey. It started with small things. They'd enthusiastically attend her volleyball games, but would find excuses to miss my academic award ceremonies. When we turned 12, Audrey got a brand new bike in her favorite color purple, while I received a hand-me-down from our cousin that my dad repainted. I pretended not to notice, but the pattern continued year after year. On our 16th birthday, Audrey received a beautiful silver charm bracelet from Tiffany's. I got a practical leather-bound planner because you're so organized, Haley. The disparity in gifts was something I'd grown accustomed to, but it still stung. I learned early on that if I wanted something, I needed to earn it myself. When we turned 15, I got my working papers and found a job at JavaJolt, the local coffee shop. I worked weekends and after school, saving nearly every penny I earned. I opened my own bank account and watched with pride as my savings grew. By 17, I had almost $3,000 saved for college while maintaining my perfect GPA. Audrey, meanwhile, had started dating Jason Mitchell during sophomore year. He was the captain of the football team, handsome, charming, and, from what I could tell, trouble. He drove a car his rich parents bought him and treated rules like suggestions. My parents adored him, especially my dad, who would invite Jason to watch sports with him whenever he came over. I tried to warn my parents that Jason seemed irresponsible. I'd overheard rumors about drinking parties at his house when his parents were away, and I'd seen how possessive he became when other guys talked to Audrey. But whenever I voiced my concerns, my mom would say, "Don't be jealous, Haley. Not everyone can date the quarterback." My dad would add, "Jason comes from a good family. You worry too much." By junior year, Audrey was spending less time at home and more time with Jason. Her grades started slipping, and she quit the volleyball team, claiming she needed more time to study. But I knew she was spending those afternoons at Jason's house. I tried talking to Audrey directly, sister to sister, but she accused me of trying to ruin her relationship because I didn't have a boyfriend of my own. The truth was, I didn't have time for dating. Between my advanced placement classes, debate team, part-time job, and volunteer work at the library, which I hoped would strengthen my college applications, my schedule was packed. I had goals and plans, and I was determined to achieve them through hard work. Near the end of junior year, everything changed. Audrey came home one evening, eyes red from crying. She locked herself in our parents' bedroom with them for over 2 hours. When they finally emerged, my mother's eyes were puffy, and my father looked like he'd aged 10 years. Audrey went straight to our shared bedroom without looking at me. Later that night, Audrey whispered across the darkness between our beds, "I'm pregnant." I sat up in shock. "What? Are you sure?" 3 positive tests, she confirmed, her voice breaking. Mom made a doctor's appointment for tomorrow. What about Jason? I asked. Audrey started crying again. He blocked my number when I told him. His parents are sending him to a private school in Connecticut for senior year. I crossed the room and held my sister as she cried. Despite our differences and the favoritism I'd experienced, she was still my twin. I felt her pain deeply, and I was furious at Jason for abandoning her. It'll be okay, I promised, though I had no idea how. We'll figure it out together. For a brief moment, I thought maybe this crisis would bring our family closer. That my parents would see I could be counted on, that my responsibility and hard work had value. I even thought about how I could help with the baby, maybe watch my niece or nephew while continuing my education locally instead of going away to college. I had no idea that within weeks, I would be the one cast out of the family while Jason, the actual person who had gotten my sister pregnant and abandoned her, would face no consequences at all. 1 week before the start of senior year, my parents called a family meeting in our living room. These meetings were rare and usually meant something serious was happening. The last one had been when our grandmother died 3 years earlier. I sat on the couch next to Audrey, who looked uncomfortable and wouldn't meet my eyes. My father stood by the fireplace, arms crossed, while my mother perched on the arm of his recliner. As you both know, my father began, our family is facing a significant change. Audrey will be having a baby in about 6 months, and we need to prepare. My mother nodded. We've been discussing the logistics, and we need to make some adjustments to accommodate the baby's needs. I nodded supportively, thinking they were about to outline chore redistributions or maybe ask if I could pick up extra shifts at Javajolt to help with baby expenses. Audrey needs stability and support right now, my father continued. And when the baby comes, she'll need space for a crib, changing table, and all the baby's things. My mother leaned forward. We've decided that Audrey will need to take your bedroom, Haley. I blinked, not comprehending at first. My bedroom? But where would I sleep? We can convert the attic space into a bedroom for you, my father explained. It's already partially finished, and I can install better insulation and proper lighting before winter. The attic was a cramped space with a sloped ceiling so low I couldn't stand up straight in most of it. It had one tiny window and was freezing in winter and sweltering in summer. It was where we stored Christmas decorations and old suitcases, not a place for a person to live. But that's not a bedroom, I said, my voice small. And I've had my room since I was 5. Audrey needs the space more than you do now, my mother said firmly. She'll have a baby to care for. Your room is bigger and closer to our bedroom, so we can help with the baby at night. I looked at Audrey, who was studying her hands in her lap. She hadn't said a word. This isn't fair, I said, feeling a lump growing in my throat. Why can't we convert the attic for Audrey and the baby? Or clean out the garage? Or maybe convert part of the basement? My father's face hardened. The attic and basement aren't suitable for an infant, Haley. You should be more understanding of your sister's situation. Understanding? I repeated, my voice rising. I've been nothing but understanding. I've been working since I was 15 while Audrey gets everything handed to her. I've been saving for college while she was out with Jason. Now she makes one mistake, and I'm the one who has to give up my room. That's enough, my mother snapped. Pregnancy is not a mistake that we punish people for. This baby is going to be part of our family, and we all need to make sacrifices. All of us except Jason, apparently, I muttered. My father pointed his finger at me. Jason's parents are handling him their way. Our concern is Audrey and the baby. This discussion is over. You'll move your things to the attic this weekend, and I'll start working on making it more comfortable. I looked at Audrey again, silently pleading for her to say something, to stand up for me. She finally looked up, her eyes wet with tears. I'm sorry, Haley, she whispered. I didn't ask for this. But she didn't object to taking my room either. That weekend, I reluctantly moved my belongings to the attic. My father had cleared out the storage items and installed a cheap fixture in the center of the ceiling, but it did little to brighten the gloomy space. He promised to add insulation and better heating when he had time, but I knew where his priorities would be. The first night in the attic, I cried silently into my pillow. The mattress from the pull-out couch in the basement smelled musty, and I could hear every creak of the house. When it rained the following week, I discovered a leak that dripped water right next to my makeshift desk. As the weeks passed, the promised improvements to the attic never materialized. My father was busy converting my old bedroom into a nursery, painting the walls a pale yellow and assembling a white crib that my parents had purchased. My mother was taking Audrey to frequent doctor appointments and shopping for baby clothes. Meanwhile, my responsibilities increased. I was expected to drive Audrey to school since she felt nauseous in the mornings. I took on more household chores because my mother said Audrey needed to rest, and my father was too busy with nursery preparations. I was still working at JavaJolt, but now had to give rides to Audrey's prenatal appointments when my parents couldn't take her. My grades began to slip for the first time in my life. I was exhausted from poor sleep in the uncomfortable attic, stressed about my increasing responsibilities, and resentful of how unfair everything felt. When my AP calculus teacher pulled me aside to ask if everything was okay at home after I got AC on a test, I nearly broke down in tears. 3 months into this arrangement, things came to a head. I came home from work to find Audrey wearing my favorite sweater, the one I'd saved up to buy myself for the previous winter. "That's mine," I said, dropping my backpack on the kitchen floor. "You didn't ask permission." Audrey shrugged. "None of my clothes fit anymore, and Mom said I could borrow some of yours." "Mom doesn't get to decide who wears my clothes," I snapped. "Especially clothes I bought with my own money." My mother walked in from the living room, frowning. "Don't be selfish, Haley. Your sister is pregnant. Her body is changing, and she needs comfortable clothes. Then buy her some. Or let her wear yours." I shouted, my frustration boiling over. "You've taken my bedroom, my privacy, my time, and now my clothes? When does it stop? What else do I have to give up for Audrey's mistake?" "That's it," my father thundered, having heard the commotion from the garage. He stormed into the kitchen, face red with anger. "I've had enough of your attitude. Your sister needs our support, not your judgment. If you can't be part of this family during difficult times, then maybe you shouldn't be part of it at all." The kitchen fell silent. Even my father seemed shocked by his own words. "Robert," my mother said quietly, but she didn't contradict him. I looked from my father to my mother to Audrey, who had tears streaming down her face, but remained silent. In that moment, I knew where I stood in this family. "Is that really how you feel?" I asked, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. My father's jaw clenched. "Either accept your role in this family or find somewhere else to live." I nodded slowly, a strange calm washing over me. "I understand now." I turned and walked up to the attic, closing the door behind me. I sat on my bed and stared at the wall for what felt like hours, tears flowing freely but silently. By morning, I had made my decision. The next day, I called my best friend Emma Sullivan. Emma and I had been close since elementary school, and her parents, Brian and Kelly Sullivan, had always treated me like a second daughter. Through tears, I explained my situation. "Let me talk to my parents," Emma said immediately. "You can stay with us. We have the guest room no one uses." 2 hours later, Emma called back. "Mom and Dad said you can stay as long as you need to. They're furious about how you're being treated." Relief washed over me. At least I had somewhere to go. I waited until the following Saturday when my family would be out for most of the day. Audrey had a prenatal appointment, and afterward, my parents planned to take her shopping for maternity clothes. Once they left, I packed everything I could fit into my old suitcases and several plastic storage bins. Clothes, books, my laptop, and personal mementos, anything I couldn't bear to leave behind. Emma and her father arrived with their SUV to help transport my belongings. It took 3 trips to get everything to the Sullivans' house. Before leaving for the final time, I sat at the kitchen table and wrote a note. "Mom, Dad, and Audrey, I've decided to take Dad up on his suggestion to find somewhere else to live. I'm staying with the Sullivans until graduation. I'll continue to attend school and work at Java Jolt. Please don't worry about me. Haley. I placed the note on the kitchen counter where they would see it, took one last look around the house I had grown up in, and closed the door behind me. The Sullivans had prepared their guest room for me. It was small but comfortable, with a real bed, a desk for studying, and most importantly, a door I could close for privacy. Kelly had put fresh flowers on the nightstand and hung a bulletin board where I could pin photos and mementos. "We're so happy to have you," Haley Kelly said, hugging me. "This is your home for as long as you need it." That evening, the calls and texts started. First from my mother, demanding to know where I was. Then from my father, ordering me to stop this nonsense and come home immediately. I texted back that I was safe and staying with the Sullivans, but I wouldn't be returning home. The calls continued for several days, growing increasingly angry. My father threatened to call the police and report me as a runaway. Brian Sullivan, who worked as an accountant, calmly explained to him that at 17, I was legally allowed to choose where I lived, especially since they had effectively kicked me out. After that, the calls stopped abruptly. Audrey called once, sobbing, saying she missed me and hadn't wanted any of this to happen. But when I asked if she had stood up for me to our parents, her silence was answer enough. Living with the Sullivans was a revelation. They treated Emma and me equally, included me in family dinners, and respected my privacy. Brian helped me set up a bank account at a different bank than where my father worked, ensuring my savings were secure. Kelly drove me to school on days when I had early classes and couldn't get a ride with Emma. Despite the stability of my new living situation, the months that followed were challenging. I increased my hours at Java Jolt to save more money, knowing I'd need it for college expenses. Between work, school, and college applications, I barely had time to sleep. But for the first time in years, I felt respected and valued. My guidance counselor, Miss Patricia Jenkins, was a godsend during this period. When I explained my situation, she helped me navigate the financial aid process, identifying scholarships specifically for students in difficult family circumstances. She wrote me a glowing recommendation letter and stayed after hours to help me polish my application essays. "You're one of the most resilient students I've ever worked with," Ms. Jenkins told me. "Colleges will be lucky to have you." In April, I received an acceptance letter from the state university with a partial scholarship. It wasn't my dream school. That would have been too expensive even with financial aid, but it offered a strong business program and was far enough away that I wouldn't have to worry about running into my family around town. As graduation approached, I wondered if my parents and Audrey would attend the ceremony. Emma's parents assured me they would be there, cheering loudly enough for both families. The day before graduation, I received a text from Audrey. "The baby's been kicking a lot. Mom and Dad are taking me to the doctor tomorrow to make sure everything's okay. Sorry we'll miss your graduation. Congrats." I didn't respond. I knew it was just an excuse. Graduation day was sunny and warm. As I walked across the stage to receive my diploma, I heard the Sullivans cheering from the audience. Emma and I took photos together in our caps and gowns, and her parents took me out for a celebration dinner afterward. They gave me a beautiful leather portfolio with my initials embossed on it, telling me it was for my bright future in business. By midsummer, I had moved into a tiny studio apartment near campus, furnished with second-hand items the Sullivans helped me find at thrift stores and yard sales. It was small and bare bones, but it was mine. No one could take it away from me or force me to give it up. As I unpacked my few belongings, I realized I was completely on my own at 18 years old. The thought was terrifying, but also strangely liberating. From now on, my life would be entirely what I made of it. College was a fresh start. I declared a major in business with a concentration in real estate, fascinated by the idea of helping people find homes and potentially building financial security through property investment. Between classes, I worked 3 part-time jobs, mornings at a campus coffee shop, evenings at the university library, and weekends at a local real estate office where I answered phones and filed paperwork. It was during my sophomore year that I met Thomas Reynolds, a professor in my real estate finance course. Professor Reynolds had worked as a successful realtor for 20 years before joining the university faculty. He noticed my dedication and consistently thoughtful questions in class. "You have a natural aptitude for this field," he told me after class one day. "Have you considered applying for an internship?" When I explained my multiple jobs left little time for unpaid internships, he offered me a position at his own real estate company, Reynolds Properties, where he still maintained an active broker license. The pay wasn't much, but it was better than the coffee shop, and the experience would be invaluable. "I see something special in you, Haley," he said. "You understand that real estate isn't just about selling houses, it's about helping people find stability and build wealth." Under Thomas's mentorship, I learned the real estate business from the ground up. I started by organizing files and preparing marketing materials, then gradually took on more responsibilities, conducting market research, writing property descriptions, and eventually accompanying Thomas to showings and open houses. Throughout college, I maintained a rigorous schedule. Weekdays were filled with classes and studying, while evenings and weekends were dedicated to work. I rarely participated in typical college social activities, parties, football games, or spring break trips were luxuries I couldn't afford in terms of both time and money. But I didn't mind. Every hour worked, every dollar saved, every skill mastered was an investment in my future. I graduated with honors, my diploma mailed to my apartment since I didn't attend the ceremony. There was no family to watch me walk across the stage, and I preferred to pick up an extra shift at Reynolds Properties that day instead. With Thomas's recommendation, I secured my real estate license immediately after graduation. He offered me a position as a junior agent at his firm, and I eagerly accepted. My first year was challenging. I took whatever clients the senior agents didn't want, worked odd hours to accommodate showings, and learned to handle difficult situations with grace. My first sale was a modest 2-bedroom condo to a young couple. When they received their keys, the wife hugged me with tears in her eyes. "Thank you for helping us find our first home," she said. That moment cemented my passion for real estate, the knowledge that I was helping people achieve stability, something I had longed for myself. As my client base grew, so did my savings. I lived frugally, maintaining the same small apartment and driving a used car I'd purchased for cash. Every extra dollar went into my savings account, earmarked for my first investment property. At 24, I found it, a foreclosed single-family home in a transitioning neighborhood. The property needed significant work, the kitchen was outdated, the bathroom fixtures were leaking, and the carpet throughout was stained beyond salvation. But the structure was sound, and the location had potential as the city was planning to develop a park nearby. I secured a mortgage with the help of Thomas, who co-signed the loan. Nights and weekends that had once been dedicated to multiple jobs were now spent on renovation. I learned to tile, paint, and install fixtures by watching online tutorials and asking questions at the hardware store. For specialized work like electrical and plumbing, I hired contractors, but saved money by doing the prep and finish work myself. 6 months later, I listed the property and sold it for a modest profit. I could have made more if I'd held onto it longer, but I was eager to reinvest and continue building my portfolio. With the proceeds, I purchased 2 more distressed properties, a small duplex and another single-family home. My strategy was simple but effective. Buy undervalued properties in neighborhoods showing early signs of revitalization, renovate them to be safe and attractive without going overboard on luxury features, and either sell for a reasonable profit or hold and rent, depending on market conditions. By 25, I owned 4 rental properties that generated enough passive income to supplement my real estate commissions. I had established a reputation as an agent who was honest, hardworking, and knowledgeable about investment properties. Many of my clients were first-time homebuyers or small-scale investors like myself. At 26, I found my dream home, a beautiful craftsman built in the 1920s with original hardwood floors, built-in bookshelves, and a wide front porch. It needed work like all my properties, but I could see its potential immediately. The moment I walked through the door, I knew this wasn't a flip or a rental. This was the stable, beautiful home I had always wanted. The renovation took nearly a year, as I was determined to preserve the home's historic character while updating it for modern living. I refinished the hardwood floors myself, restored the original windows, and spent weekends hunting for period-appropriate fixtures at salvage yards. The kitchen and bathrooms were updated with classic designs that complemented the home's vintage charm. When the work was finally complete, I spent my first night on a mattress in the master bedroom, surrounded by boxes yet to be unpacked. I remember lying awake, looking at the moonlight filtering through the restored windows, and feeling a profound sense of accomplishment. I had created the home and the life I wanted through my own efforts, without help from anyone in my biological family. Throughout these years, I had no contact with my parents or Audrey. Sometimes I would see families in the homes I sold and feel a pang of sadness for what I had lost, or perhaps for what I had never really had. But those moments became less frequent as I built connections with friends, colleagues, and clients who respected and valued me. Thomas and his wife Susan had become like family to me, inviting me to holiday dinners and celebrating my professional milestones. Emma and I remained close despite attending different colleges, and I was the maid of honor at her wedding. The Sullivans still checked in regularly, proud of the woman I had become. I had created a good life for myself. I was financially secure, professionally successful, and emotionally stable. I had a beautiful home, meaningful work, and people who genuinely cared about me. I thought I had finally closed the chapter on my painful past. Then, after 10 years of silence, Audrey reached out through Facebook. The message appeared in my other folder one Tuesday morning as I was checking my emails before a client meeting. "Haley, it's Audrey. I know it's been a long time, but I'd really like to talk to you. Please." I stared at my screen, a rush of emotions flooding through me: anger, curiosity, anxiety, and a tiny flicker of hope I couldn't quite extinguish. After a full day of deliberation, I responded with my phone number and a brief, "You can call me." Audrey called that evening. Her voice was familiar yet different, more mature, with a weariness I didn't remember. "Thank you for responding," she began. "I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't," I admitted. "Why are you contacting me now after 10 years? She hesitated. "I've thought about reaching out so many times. I didn't know what to say. Sorry we kicked you out and ruined your senior year seemed inadequate." "It is," I agreed. "Could we meet somewhere?" she asked. "I'd rather talk in person." We arranged to meet at a coffee shop downtown, neutral territory. When I arrived, I almost didn't recognize her. The sister who had once been my identical twin now looked like a distant relative. She was thinner than I remembered, with dark circles under her eyes and premature lines around her mouth. Her hair was cut short in a practical style, and she wore no makeup. "You look great," she said, studying me. "Really successful." "Thanks," I replied, not returning the compliment because it would have been a lie. "How's the baby?" "Not really a baby anymore, I guess." "Tyler's 10 now," she said, pulling out her phone to show me a photo of a boy with her eyes and jawline. "He's smart, loves soccer and video games." "He looks like you," I said, feeling a strange sadness for this nephew I'd never met. Over the next hour, Audrey filled me in on the past decade. She'd never finished high school, instead getting her GED while caring for Tyler. She worked as a medical receptionist, a job that barely covered their expenses. Jason had never been part of Tyler's life, and she'd eventually stopped trying to get child support from him after learning he'd moved to California. Then she got to what I suspected was the real reason for our meeting. Mom and Dad lost the house 4 years ago, she said, staring into her coffee cup. Dad made some bad investments, and then the bank downsized. They've been renting, moving from place to place as the rents keep rising. I remained silent, waiting for her to continue. They've been living with me and Tyler in my 2-bedroom apartment for the past 8 months, she added. It's challenging. I imagine it would be, I said neutrally. Tyler mentioned to his friend at school that his grandparents live with us, and the friend's mom works in real estate. She looked you up and told Audrey you're doing really well. She hesitated. Mom and Dad would like to see you. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet my parents the following weekend at a restaurant. I chose an upscale place, partly because I knew the food would be good if the conversation wasn't, and partly, I admit, to show them I could afford it. They looked older than I expected. My father's hair had turned completely gray, and he'd gained weight around his middle. My mother looked frail, her once vibrant presence diminished. They brought Tyler, a gangly boy who bore a striking resemblance to Audrey at that age. Haley, my mother said, rising to hug me. I allowed the embrace but didn't return it. You look wonderful. My father nodded stiffly. You've done well for yourself. The dinner was awkward. My parents asked about my work, my home, my investments, questions focused entirely on my financial success rather than my personal life or well-being. They made no mention of the past or their decision to kick me out. It was as if they were meeting a successful distant relative rather than a daughter they had abandoned. Tyler was the only bright spot in the evening. He was curious about everything, asking me intelligent questions about real estate and how houses were built. I found myself warming to him despite my reservations about the rest of the family. Over the next 2 months, I cautiously allowed more family gatherings, a Sunday brunch, a walk in the park with Tyler, coffee with just Audrey. Each time, my parents probed more about my business, my properties, my finances. They commented on my nice car and expensive watch, items I had purchased with years of hard work. The hints began subtly. My mother mentioned how difficult it was for my father to climb the stairs to Audrey's second-floor apartment with his bad knee. My father commented on how skilled he was at home repairs, suggesting he could help me maintain my properties if they lived closer. Finally, during a dinner at Audrey's cramped apartment, they made their move. We've been thinking, my father began, setting down his fork deliberately. Your mother and I aren't getting any younger, and this housing situation isn't ideal for any of us. My mother nodded. We know you have that big house all to yourself, and Audrey mentioned you've been renovating it. We thought maybe we could move in with you, just temporarily. Your father could help finish the renovations. I set my glass down slowly. My renovations are complete, actually. I hired professionals. Well, there's always maintenance to be done, my father insisted. And we could help with utilities, maybe some rent once we get back on our feet. I appreciate the offer, I said carefully, but I prefer living alone. My home is my sanctuary. My father's expression darkened. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? By turning your back on family when we need help. I stared at him, stunned by his audacity. Everything you've done for me? You kicked me out at 17. I haven't heard from any of you in 10 years until Audrey contacted me 2 months ago. We raised you, my mother interjected. We fed you, clothed you, educated you. We gave you the foundation for your success. And then you took away my home, my support system, and my family at the moment I needed them most, I replied, my voice steady despite my racing heart. I built what I have now on my own, despite what happened, not because of it. My father's face reddened. I invested 18 years in raising you. That house you're so proud of? You wouldn't have it without the values and education we provided. We deserve some return on our investment. Return on investment? I repeated, incredulous. I was your daughter, not a stock portfolio. Family helps family, my mother insisted. Tyler needs a stable environment. We need a place to live. You have extra space. It's the right thing to do. I stood up, placing my napkin on the table. I'm sorry you're in a difficult situation, but my home is not the solution. I'll help Audrey and Tyler find a more suitable apartment if they want, but I won't have you living in my house. After all we've done for you, my father sputtered, that's how you treat family? I looked him directly in the eyes. You taught me exactly how to treat family when you gave me an ultimatum 10 years ago. I'm just following your example. I left Audrey's apartment that night feeling shaken but resolved. I texted her the next day, apologizing for the tension and reiterating my offer to help her and Tyler find a better living situation, separate from our parents. She never responded. 2 weeks later, a courier delivered an envelope to my office. Inside were legal papers naming me as a defendant in a civil lawsuit. My parents were suing me, claiming partial ownership of my properties based on their investment in my upbringing and education. I sat at my desk, papers trembling in my hands, as the magnitude of this second betrayal washed over me. They hadn't changed at all. They still saw me as nothing more than a resource to be exploited, a means to an end. This time, however, I wasn't a vulnerable teenager without options. I was a successful businesswoman with resources of my own, and I wasn't going to let them take anything from me ever again. My first reaction to the lawsuit was panic. Could they actually do this? Could my parents claim ownership of properties I had purchased with my own money, renovated with my own hands, after years of having no contact with them? I called Thomas immediately, my hands still shaking. They're suing me, I said when he answered. My parents are actually suing me for my properties. Slow down, he said calmly. Start from the beginning. After explaining the situation, Thomas recommended a lawyer who specialized in family law. Jessica Martinez is the best in the business. If anyone can shut this down quickly, it's her. I met with Jessica the following day, bringing the lawsuit papers and a timeline of events I'd hastily put together the previous night. Her office was warm and inviting, but her demeanor was all business. Let me be direct, she said after reviewing the documents. This lawsuit is absurd. Your parents have no legal claim to your properties. However, we need to take it seriously because even frivolous lawsuits can cause problems if not properly addressed. So they can't win? I asked, relief flooding through me. Based on what you've told me, absolutely not. But we need to build a strong case to ensure the judge dismisses this quickly and decisively. Over the next few weeks, Jessica and I worked to gather documentation that would refute my parents' claims. I pulled bank statements dating back to my first job at JavaJolt, showing my consistent saving pattern. I found receipts for major purchases I'd made with my own money during high school, clothes, my laptop, school supplies. I assembled tax returns demonstrating I had financially supported myself completely since age 17. Emma and her parents provided sworn statements about the circumstances of my leaving home, confirming I had been effectively kicked out and had received no financial support from my family afterward. My former employers submitted letters verifying my employment history and work ethic. Thomas provided documentation of my career progression and the legitimate sources of funding for my property investments. As we dug deeper, Jessica discovered something disturbing. My parents had been investigating my properties for months before filing the lawsuit. They had taken photos of my home and rental properties, researched property values and tax assessments, and even approached one of my tenants pretending to be potential buyers interested in the neighborhood. This wasn't an impulsive action, Jessica concluded. They've been planning this, gathering information to build their case. They deliberately reconnected with you to assess your assets. The realization made me physically ill. The brief reconciliation, the family dinners, even Tyler's innocent questions about my work, it had all been groundwork for this lawsuit. They had used my nephew to soften me up, to gain access to information about my finances and properties. I can't believe I fell for it, I said, fighting back tears of anger and humiliation. I actually thought maybe they had changed, that they wanted to make amends. Jessica's expression softened slightly. People like your parents count on emotional manipulation. They know which buttons to push because they installed them. But now we're going to use their planning against them. The court date was set for 3 months later. As it approached, my anxiety grew. I had nightmares about losing my home, about being 17 again with nowhere to go. Jessica assured me repeatedly that our case was solid, but the fear lingered. The day of the hearing arrived. I wore a conservative navy suit, my hair pulled back in a neat bun. Jessica had advised me to project confidence and professionalism to show the judge I was a responsible, successful adult. Not the vulnerable teenager my parents were trying to portray. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, with worn wooden benches and fluorescent lighting. My parents sat on the opposite side with their attorney, a middle-aged man in an expensive suit. Audrey wasn't present, which didn't surprise me. My father glared at me across the room. My mother kept her eyes down, fidgeting with her purse strap. Neither acknowledged me when I entered. After the initial formalities, my parents' attorney presented their case. He spoke eloquently about parental investment and family obligations, arguing that my success was directly attributable to the foundation and values my parents had provided. He claimed that the money I had saved while living under their roof was family money that should have been contributed to household expenses, especially during Audrey's pregnancy. Your Honor, Ms. Wilson's achievements didn't occur in a vacuum, he concluded. They were built on years of sacrifice and investment by her parents, who now find themselves in financial distress while their daughter enjoys the fruits of their labor. Basic fairness dictates that they should share in the success they made possible. When it was Jessica's turn, she approached the bench with quiet confidence. Your Honor, this case isn't about family obligations or parental investment. It's about a systematic pattern of exploitation and abandonment, followed by an opportunistic attempt to capitalize on Ms. Wilson's hard-earned success. She methodically presented our evidence, starting with the documented favoritism throughout my childhood and culminating in my forced departure from home at 17. She submitted bank records showing every dollar I had earned and saved since my first job, tax returns demonstrating my financial independence, and affidavits from the Sullivans confirming I had received no parental support after leaving home. Unless Wilson has not received a single dollar of financial support from her parents since age 17, Jessica emphasized. No help with college tuition, no assistance with living expenses, not even a birthday card. For 10 years, there was complete silence from the plaintiffs until they learned of Ms. Wilson's financial success. The judge, an older woman with silver-rimmed glasses, interrupted several times to ask pointed questions of both attorneys. When my parents' lawyer mentioned their ongoing emotional support, the judge fixed him with a skeptical look. Counselor, did your clients provide any financial support to the defendant after she left their home? She asked. Your Honor, the support provided during her formative years. That wasn't my question. The judge cut in. Did they provide any support, financial, emotional, or otherwise, after age 17? No, Your Honor, but... And did they make any attempt to contact her during the 10 years before this recent reconnection? Not in my knowledge, Your Honor. The judge nodded and made a note. Please continue, Ms. Martinez. Jessica presented the documentation of my parents' surveillance of my properties, including photos from my tenant showing them pretending to be potential buyers. Your Honor, this lawsuit isn't a desperate attempt by struggling parents to secure housing. It's a calculated effort to appropriate assets they had no part in creating after a decade of complete absence from my client's life. As a final piece of evidence, Jessica submitted my high school diary, which documented the ultimatum my father had given me: either accept your role in this family or find somewhere else to live. Ms. Wilson did exactly what her father demanded, Jessica concluded. She found somewhere else to live. She built a life without their help. Now they want to claim ownership of that life. I asked the court to reject this transparent attempt at exploitation and dismiss this case with prejudice. The judge called a brief recess to review the evidence. When she returned, her expression was stern. Having reviewed the evidence presented by both parties, I find the plaintiff's claim to be without merit. The defendant, Ms. Wilson, has clearly established that she has been financially independent since age 17 and that all properties in question were purchased with her own legitimately earned funds. She looked directly at my parents. Furthermore, I find the nature of this lawsuit to be disturbing. The documented pattern of behavior suggests an attempt to exploit a family relationship solely for financial gain. The court cannot and will not endorse such behavior. She turned to me. Ms. Wilson, this court finds in your favor. The plaintiffs have no claim to your properties or any other assets. Finally, she addressed my parents again. Additionally, given the frivolous nature of this lawsuit and the evidence of deliberate planning and surveillance, the court orders the plaintiffs to pay the defendant's legal fees in full. This case is dismissed with prejudice. The gavel came down with a decisive crack. My parents sat in stunned silence. My father's face had turned an alarming shade of red, while my mother appeared on the verge of tears. Their attorney leaned over to whisper something to them, but my father waved him off angrily. As they stood to leave, my father looked at me with such hatred that I instinctively stepped back. "This isn't over," he muttered as he passed. Jessica placed a protective hand on my arm. "Actually, it is over, Mr. Wilson." The judge was quite clear. Any further action will result in additional penalties. My mother paused briefly, looking as if she might say something, then hurried after my father without a word. I stood in the emptying courtroom, feeling strangely hollow. I had won completely, my home was secure, my parents would have to pay my legal fees, and the judge had validated every boundary I had set. Yet there was no joy in this victory, only a profound sadness for the family I had never really had. "Are you okay?" Jessica asked gently. I nodded. "Just processing. Thank you for everything." "You did all the hard work long before you met me," she replied. "All I did was show the court who you really are, a remarkable woman who built something beautiful out of nothing. Don't let anyone take credit for that, especially not them." As I left the courthouse, I felt lighter somehow, as if I'd set down a heavy burden I hadn't realized I was carrying. The legal battle was over, but I knew the emotional aftermath was just beginning. In the weeks following the court case, I experienced a roller coaster of emotions: relief that my home and assets were secure, anger at my parents' manipulation, grief for the family relationship I would never have, and a strange sense of freedom now that all illusions had been stripped away. On Jessica's recommendation, I began seeing Dr. Sarah Bennett, a therapist who specialized in family trauma. Our first session was difficult. I had spent so many years focusing on practical survival and success that I had never properly processed the emotional impact of my family's rejection. "You've built impressive external structures," Dr. Bennett observed during our third session. "A successful career, financial security, a beautiful home. But you've been operating in survival mode for so long that you haven't had the chance to build the same kind of internal structures." "What do you mean by internal structures?" I asked. "The beliefs and understanding that help us make sense of our experiences. Right now, you're still carrying the belief that you weren't worth fighting for, that you were somehow less deserving of love and support than your sister." The words hit me like a physical blow. Despite all my accomplishments, part of me still believed I had done something to deserve being cast out, that I was fundamentally unlovable. Over months of therapy, I began to understand that the dynamics in my family had never been about my worth. My parents' favoritism toward Audrey, their willingness to sacrifice my well-being for hers, and ultimately their attempt to exploit my success, none of it reflected my value as a person. It revealed their limitations, not mine. "Toxic family systems aren't created by children," Dr. Bennett explained. "They're created and maintained by adults who prioritize their own needs over their children's well-being. You didn't cause this, Haley. And you couldn't have fixed it, no matter how perfect you tried to be." While I worked on my internal healing, I also focused on strengthening the healthy relationships in my life. Emma remained my closest friend, and I made a point of being present for important moments in her life, including the birth of her first child. Thomas and Susan Reynolds continued to mentor me professionally and personally, demonstrating what supportive family relationships could look like. I established firm boundaries regarding my biological family, no contact with my parents under any circumstances. With Audrey, I maintained a distant but civil relationship, primarily because I wanted to know my nephew Tyler. I made it clear that any discussions about our parents or attempts to mediate a reconciliation would end our limited contact immediately. 6 months after the court case, I channeled my experiences into creating a mentorship program for young people aging out of foster care and those who, like me, had been forced to become independent prematurely. Working with a local nonprofit, I developed workshops on financial literacy, housing options, and career development specifically tailored to these young adults' needs. I also began using my real estate expertise to advocate for affordable housing initiatives in my community. At planning commission meetings and city council sessions, I spoke about the importance of stable housing for families and individuals in crisis. Several of my fellow realtors joined the cause, creating a coalition that successfully lobbied for inclusionary zoning requirements in new developments. Through these efforts, I found purpose in transforming my painful experiences into support for others. Each time I helped a young person secure stable housing or develop financial skills, I felt a piece of my own past healing. During one of our sessions, Dr. Bennett asked me what home meant to me now. Home is safety, I replied after thinking for a moment. It's knowing that I have a secure place that's mine, where I make the rules and where no one can force me out. But it's also about the people who respect my boundaries and value me for who I am, not what I can give them. That's a beautiful definition, she said. And completely different from what your parents tried to make it, a transaction where your place depended on your usefulness to others. Today, at 27, I look back on the journey from homeless teenager to successful, independent woman with a mixture of pride and amazement. The path wasn't one I would have chosen, but it led me to strengths I never knew I possessed and connections with people who truly care about me. I've learned that family isn't defined by blood or legal ties, but by respect, support, and love freely given. The family I've built for myself, friends, mentors, colleagues, and the young people I now mentor, fulfills me in ways my biological family never could. As for my house, it continues to be my sanctuary. Each room represents a choice I made, an obstacle I overcame, a dream I realized through my own efforts. No court decision or legal document could ever capture what this home truly means to me. It's not just a physical structure, but a testament to my resilience and determination to create the life I deserve. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself against family members who tried to take advantage of you? Or have you had to build your own support system when your biological family let you down? Share your story in the comments below. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in these struggles can be incredibly healing. And if you found my story meaningful, please like and subscribe to hear more journeys of overcoming adversity. Thank you for listening, and remember, you have the power to build the life and home you deserve, regardless of where you started.